Spartans! What is your profession?
Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back in War Thunder and it's time to talk about the Warbond shop going into April. Now remember, the Warbond shop is a place that if you play a lot in War Thunder, you can get yourself hands on some rare vehicles and some also premium vehicles or decals or profile pictures, whatever it is that you want. It's basically a way that if you don't, want to buy stuff for GE, or if you have missed vehicles in the past, it's kind of like a comeback mechanic in a way where you're able to pick them up through the Warbond shop. So let's go into the new vehicles that are coming around, and if you want to know how to get Warbonds or the shop itself, I've done a few videos in the past about it, so you could maybe type in Warbond on the channel and it'll come up with a bunch of stuff showing you like kind of beginner's guides and things, so you can work it out. So what are the big ones for the month of April, which this Warbond shop is going to run until the 30th of April. The big ones are the I-16 Type 28, the H8K3, and then on top of this, the Boomerang Mk II, Panzer III M, AR-81C, and the M4A5. So for premium vehicles, this is a wonderful selection of them. There's a little bit for everyone, and to me, I think the front runner is definitely the H8K3 because of its armament and also its bomb load. Even though it's not as strong as it used to be, it's still a killer in the air. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my opinions on all of the premium vehicles here, and then I'm going to go through all my opinions on the trophy vehicles, because the trophy vehicles has finally changed. So if you want to understand what trophy vehicles are, these are the rare vehicles which are normally available, over the years. All of these were available in special events sometime. I think the T26E and the A13 Mk II you had to buy, maybe? Definitely the T26E, and then the rest of them were rare vehicles. Actually, no, the CR.32 Bz, I think, was also, you had to purchase. But the main thing is, these are all rare vehicles in the game, and with that, you have to basically, the only way you can get them now is through trophy vehicles. Now, these trophy vehicles are normally available on the Gaijin market after they have been purchased in coupon form and people don't want them, so they can put them on the market, or they're available as the actual box on the market when people grind them out. What a lot of people do on the Warbond shop is use it to actually get Gaijin coins on the Gaijin market on PC, so they can then use them for events, or they can use them to buy stuff in the Gaijin store which they want, because remember, you can use Gaijin coins to buy stuff in on the store, on the Gaijin store. So if you don't have any other payment methods, or if you don't want to use stuff like a debit or credit, or maybe you don't have that available to you, or any like pay safe thing, what you can do is use the Gaijin market, sell a bunch of stuff that you gain through the Warbond shop, get a bunch of Gaijin coin, and then be able to use that on the store. It's a really cool system, and personally it keeps the ecosystem growing, which is a really nice thing, to be honest. So let's go through it, and what vehicles I definitely would recommend. The reason why I held off doing this video is because if you actually go to the Warbond shop, it isn't available yet. It's still stuck on the March one, so it's kind of surprising that they've done this announcement on the 28th, which is, a few days back. And I think the reason is because maybe it's going to be a busy week next week. You've got April Fools, you've got maybe some changes when it comes to, the economic stuff, who knows. But the main thing to understand is that the announcement for this Warbond shop is earlier than the majority of them. So I'm going to have to switch, back and forth, because obviously these ones are different. You can see the last Warbond shop, the Boomerang Mk I, Yak 1B, HS129B2, the Rogo, BTD, and the SMK. All of these here are much, well, not worse, but they are definitely less usable than all of these here. So there's definitely a increase in usefulness, I think is the best way to put it, with these aircraft. So let's go through them first, and then we'll go through these vehicles here, the trophy vehicles, to see which ones that you want to pick up. As usual, I don't really like telling people what to do with their time or their money, so I'll just give my general opinions on them, and we'll move on, from there, and you can make your decision. So the first one is the Boomerang Mk II, and I'm not exactly sure how this one's going to work, because in order to purchase the Boomerang Mk II normally, you have to have purchased the Boomerang Mk I. So I'm wondering with the Warbond shop if it's going to be the same way, where if you don't have the Mk I, you can't get yourself the Mk II. But if that isn't the case, then you can just get the Mk II, by itself, and then that's, completely fine. So the Boomerang Mk II is an aircraft which used to be an absolute terror, and still is a terror in arcade because of its ridiculous maneuverability and alright speed and guns. It has 220mm with 120 rounds. This is normally good enough to be able to kill at least 3 aircraft if you are accurate, and they are Hispano Mk II, so they do a decent amount of damage. And to back it up, it has 477mm, which are on the outer areas of the aircraft, which have 4,000 rounds between them. Now, convergence, therefore, is quite an issue with this aircraft, and since it is very maneuverable and it doesn't have the highest engine power, what happens is you get really close to enemies really quickly, and therefore you've got to make sure that your convergence is set correctly for that. One of the biggest issues with the Boomerang Mk II is that it's kind of got power creeped out of existence, and the reason is because of its engine power. Its rate of climb is kind of outshone by a lot of the German aircraft and the Italian aircraft that it faces, so therefore it has to rely on its maneuverability, which it can do pretty well, and therefore you have to defensively fly until you can get, the enemy in front of you, and then you can, annihilate them. And you can do this, as I said, pretty well in the BF-109, the Boomerang Mk II. The only problem with it is that if you have 2 enemies on you, you're pretty much screwed. It's very hard to set up a kill with the Boomerang unless you are really thinking 5 steps ahead, and you also have to hope that the enemy sets up on you, which, a lot of the time they will, and you'll be able just to make them overshoot and then get on them and annihilate them. But from an aggressive offensive standpoint, or from a kill setup standpoint, I don't think it's a great plane for it. It also doesn't have any secondary armaments, so you're stuck with just the guns. So when it comes to, using it in ground realistic, it's just going to be a plane killer. Overall, I personally do enjoy it, but it is definitely a machine which has not stood the test of time very well in War Thunder, and people have very much figured it out. Great in arcade, though. The Panzer III M is the next vehicle. This is a little chonker, and you can find it right here. Bats rating 3.0, rank 2. It is pretty much just a Panzer III with the short-barreled 75 with a little bit of extra armor. That extra armor doesn't really make a lot of difference. You've got the little bit here. You don't have any on the turrets. You have a little bit of space on the side. That's pretty much, what makes the Panzer III M the Panzer III M, and also the tracks here. All you have to really do is hit its center mass here or hit it here, and it will, die. So you don't have to worry too much. It's got a crew of 5, so the survivability is pretty good. If you take out the turret, it's still got 2 people left, which is obviously great. And on top of everything, it's decently mobile for the amount of extra armor it has. I just wish that the extra armor was in more useful places. Like, I understand the the historical need for extra spaced armor around the place, but when it comes to this vehicle, in War Thunder, the majority of the time that you are playing vehicles like this, you want to be facing the enemy and attacking them, so you want the extra armor on the front, and unfortunately the majority is on the side. So the other thing is that the short barrel 75 at 3.0 Basically, you have a really bad round, and then you have some really good heat rounds. So you've got this heat one here, the HLGR-38C, pens 100 millimeters at 0 degrees, 86 at 30, and then you've got the other one, which is just a worse round, and then the rot has taken a hit from the DMAR formula, so there's literally no point in using that one. So the 100 millimeter heat is good. The problem is post-pen damage with it. It is definitely not the best for that, but the majority of the time you'll be fine as long as you're aiming for the right areas, whether it's center mass on a T-34 or whether it's the turret of other vehicles. So overall, it will be a nice little grinder for you. Rank 2 if you haven't got any of the German machines, but it's not something to really strive for because it's not too much of an upgrade over the one in the tree, and the short barrel 75, it does definitely have an issue with damage. Overall, I personally like it. You can run it with the Panzer III and the Marder 3H and the Panzer III M. You know, it's all good people, but at the end of the day, it would be much better getting a rank 3 so you could actually use it to do the the Warbonds test that we're talking about here. The next one, the A13C. So this is a Romanian plane which is sat in the Italian tree. It's sat at rank 2, 2.7. This machine was actually added quite a while back now. It's a user-made aircraft, a very nice one, and it is very much a plane which takes a little bit of time to set up because it doesn't have a great rate of climb. But the thing is, because it's at 2.7 and it's in Italy, you normally get matched up with a lot of German aircraft, which are pretty good at climbing. And what they can do is they can keep your team alive while you get up to that altitude. And then you realize that this thing is a monster. It has two MG-151 20mm in it, which is good enough to annihilate any plane, especially with 250 rounds. On top of this, it has an amazing top speed. Incredible top speed on this, especially in a dive, and it's got good maneuverability at those high speeds as well. And just for a little added bonus, it does have some bomb loads and rocket loads. When I actually played this machine, it didn't have these, but it's nice to see that it does have bombs and rockets now, so it's a bit more useful and ground realistic. Overall, this is probably the best out of the three vehicles that we've seen so far, just because of the teammates that it gets and also the fact that it goes incredibly fast and it has a good up-tip potential where the other two definitely don't, and it has good use in more than one game mode. The next vehicle on the list is the H8K3. Now the H8K3 is the big beluga of the list, and I haven't actually got it myself, but I've played against it quite a lot. Basically the H8K3 is a H6 with a ton of 20mm on it and also some pretty nice bomb loads. So the 20mm, you have 5 of them in total. 2 of them are in the blisters, so they're not in great positions, but the other 3, one in the front, one in the top right here, and then one in the back, are incredibly good at dishing out a lot of damage. You also have a back gunner right here, who has the 7.7. You've got 5 7.7s as well, 2 guys in the cockpits here, and then you've got this lad right here, just in a wonderful position. He's enjoying life. But yeah, you got a crew of 9 on this thing, you got a bunch of fuel in it, and overall it's just a huge whale of a machine, which if it can get to its targets, if there are targets on the map for it, then it can do really well, and with Japanese ground forces coming out pretty soon, this may be something to actually have a think about, and actually have, a gander at instead of one of the fighters, because it does take 2 torpedoes, the Type 91 torpedoes, which you have, the drop altitude is 0 to 260 and the drop speed range is 0 to 481, so the max speed of this thing is 503, so you're going to be able to drop these at any point against, you know, these ships which are coming in. The only issue that you might run into is because you're such a big target, you're easy to take out. It may be better to take a B7A2 or something like that. But this has the capability of taking two 800s, which is a really lovely bomb load to be able to use in ground forces or to kill bases. Once again, it really is map dependent, unfortunately. When it comes to large Japanese planes like this, a lot of Japanese maps just don't have the AI or the ground forces that you want to be able to, you know, use to. The maps don't have the ground forces for you to attack, and therefore you kind of just turn into a defensive gunboat, which is great. You know, the HAK-3 is really good at that, but if you want to make a ton of RP and Silver Lines, you want to be on maps with bases and AI, kind of like how the BV-238 has a better time of it than this thing. It also is rank 2 again, just like the rest of them, so, you know, there's no clear winner when it comes to the research department yet, but overall, in my opinion, this is the funnest plane, and also the one with the biggest potential, because of the Japanese Navy coming probably next update, since they said that was going to happen. Well, they said that was going to happen in the first half of the year, which is, you know, there's only 2 updates in the first half of the year, and we've already had one of them. The M4A5 is the next one, the Ram, the Canadian vehicle, which is sadly in the American tree. One day it would be lovely to see my Canadian brother in the British tree, along with along with its Commonwealth compatriots. But the M4A5 is a fun vehicle to use. It has the 6-pounder on it, and it's one of those ones that you don't really see a lot in battle. And because it has some interesting curves on the front of it, you know, you have this area here, and the little things here. A lot of people struggle to know where to shoot it, and if you angle it as well, you know, you've got pretty decent armor at 3.7. So the main thing about it is because of its awkwardness, because of the fact that you don't see many in battle, kind of like the AC-4, what happens is people have no idea how to deal with this. Now, the 6-pounder as well, after the Dimar formally stuff, and also after the other changes to it, it does have a decent amount of pen behind it at 3.7. You know, this thing is a KV killer. It's a very much heavy tank dealer of damage, and it's got a really good reload rate of right now 5.2 seconds with a good gun depression at 7 degrees. Not the best, but, you know, good enough. So with all that said, it's a medium tank with a lot of meat behind it. I wish it had a 50 cal on the top instead of a 30, but that's standard Canadian, and it's pretty good. You know, it's basically the best way to say it is it's very similar to a Sherman with a slightly better, more penetrating gun, right? And also a little bit more survivability because of the unfamiliarity with the people fighting it. Now, the other thing is, if you want to know where to shoot it, you shoot it here. You shoot it right in this hatch, and if you hit that hatch, you hit the driver in the head, and it explodes, hits the ammo, and then also kills the whole turret. 5-man crew once again, so good survivability, but if you hit that hatch, it's going to kill everybody in the tank, and there's literally nothing you can do about it. Overall, I like this vehicle, but I can understand why people would prefer the other vehicles over it, just because it's once you figure it out, just like the AC-4, it's not hard to kill. And there will be quite a lot of people out there who will have already figured out where to shoot it, if they've ever seen one. The next and last one of the premium vehicles is the I-16 Type 28. This is one of those terrors of the air at rank 3 at 2.7. You can find it right here. And this plane can actually catch a lot of people out. I definitely see it in the same way as the Boomerang, where this aircraft doesn't have the power when it comes to its engine to be able to go out there and play the energy fighting game or the boom and zoom game. So you have to play the complete defensive fighter game, and because of its maneuverability and roll rate, you can do that quite well. The only issue is, of course, your max speed is really low, so that has to be taken into account. And if you come up against a good pilot, there's not really a lot you can do against them, apart from maybe try and force an overshoot, but most pilots, don't do that. It does have two 20mm Shavaks in it with 300 rounds, which is a good amount. They're accurate 20mm guns. A lot of people don't like the damage that they do, and I can understand why, but I think it's okay, especially if you have, 300 rounds. It's a simple, basic aircraft. I see it as like a toy aircraft, where it's pretty much designed to just, run around and roll and do crazy maneuvers. This would be very good in arcade, and also pretty decent and realistic. The only issue, as I said, is the fact that it's the same as the Boomerang. So if somebody gets on your tail and they know what they're doing, there's not a lot you can do. And then on top of it, if you come up against two people and you're trying to defensively fly, you're also screwed. There's not a lot you can do unless they decide to use attack patterns which coincide with each other. Then you can pick them off. It is nice though, unlike the Boomerang, it does get access to rockets, and it actually gets access to some which pen 60mm, so these will be useful in ground forces, doing a lot of damage there. And also it gets access to some bombs, but the bombs aren't too big. I think the rockets would be better to use. A lot of people like this aircraft. I also do. I just wish it had a bit more engine power to it, and then I think it would be a lot better. So now we're going to have a look at the other stuff. By the way, this is the decal that you can get. Personally, I like getting the bi-weekly decals, and then the the emblems or the decals in the Warbond shop. If I'm not getting anything else, then it's a good pickup. But the majority of the time, I've been getting profile pictures and stuff like that. But this one's quite nice. It's a lovely picture of a tiger wagon, whatever that is. So let's talk about the new trophy vehicles. As I said, it's a new trophy box, so we have a new set of vehicles, which is wonderful. The first one is the LVT A4. Now, this is an American platform that you can see here that was given to the nationalist Chinese, and then when they were overrun in certain areas, the People's Liberation Army of China, or the Chinese People's Liberation Army, whatever it is, the PLA, took them and then stuck Soviet 57mm on them. So in game, we have them in the form of this vehicle here. So you have an LVT chassis with a 57mm. Now, the only issue with this when it comes to its killing power is the fact that it has really bad gun depression. So getting guns on target in such a large tank destroyer, which has no armor, can really be a pain. And on top of this, it only has one 7.62 millimeter coaxial as a secondary gun, so what will happen a lot is you will get gunned down by aircraft from the air, which will annihilate this open turret. And also, since you have no armor on the top, they'll also annihilate everything else in you. So you're a large target for aircraft, you're a large target for anything, and you have absolutely no armor. So you have to rely on the gun. And the gun at 2.3 is very good. It's very similar to the Pz.III and how that works, where you just run around like a madman, park yourself in a position, and then try and annihilate stuff with the gun. The problem is, because you're such a large silhouette, it's harder to be able to hide yourself. But this thing can be updated very well, the gun, and 8.7 second reload's a little bit slow, but this thing's got good traverse, it's got okay reverse, it's got good speed forward, so repositioning isn't too bad in it. I just wish it had a bit more armor, but then again, it's an LVT. Overall, I didn't really enjoy using this thing, just because it's not really my type of playstyle, and also the turret itself, it can only go so far each direction, so you can't do a full 360 turn with it, which is definitely an issue. I don't think I'll be using this thing anytime soon. It'll just kind of gather dust in the hangar and not be used. The next one is the HE51B2H. Now, a lot of people have been really asking for this thing back, which is kind of interesting because it's just a HE51 with floats on it. And I think they've been asking for it back for two reasons. One of it, it's a rare, which came out ages ago. You know, you're talking about years ago at this point. And then also, because Naval has just come out, or hasn't just come out, it's been out for more than 6 months now, but it feels like it's just come out. So you can use this to capture points in Naval, you can use it to, you know, be very useful in Naval, and also you can use it to bomb things. It's also got the smallest bombs in game, I believe. It has 6 10-kilo bombs with 0.75 explosive mass. Look how diddy these things are. You can see them. They're incredibly small. It also has access to 2 7.92s, and this thing can actually be the terror of the air. Because of the fact it has the floats, it gets an air spawn. It used to get like a bomber or an attacker air spawn. I'm not sure if it still does, but overall, it is a nice little aircraft that we have here. I just wish that it was available to more people, and now, well, guess what it is, because of its addition to the Warbond shop in April. It has the BMW 6 12-cylinder inline with a 750 horsepower, and the way to use this thing is very much like the Focke-Wulf 189 Uhu. You pretty much just fling it about in the air, have fun against the monoplanes that you can outturn, but understand that you're going to run out of energy pretty quickly after a few turns, and then you're going to have to play normally. So it gives you the initial advantage, but after that, you're going to have to play like an actual, like an actual pilot. So make sure that you capitalize on that advantage with the 2 7.92s that you have, which generally don't do a ton of damage, but they can still set fires, they can still, pierce a lot of stuff. The next one is the T-26E. This is an up-armored T-26, and I don't know where I got it from, but I have it. I think it might have been from the closed beta test or something like that when they offered it in a pack. But you can see here's the T-26E. It's got extra armor on it, mainly on the turret. And even though it's got extra armor, it doesn't really make a difference. It just makes it really slow. And also, it means that you have, a thicker turret. This is the normal T-26 that we can see. And then if we have a look at the T-26E, it's just a fat turret, right? And a little bit of extra armor. So if this thing actually comes out and, you have a lot of 1-0s on the enemy team, I mean, there are still a lot of stuff that can pen you quite well. The Panzer IIs, the BT series, the A13s. So the extra armor doesn't really do anything. And also, on top of it, because of the extra armor, you lose a ton of speed on this vehicle. So the upgrade actually makes it, I would say, worse than the pre-existing T-26, unless you can angle it well and get some bounces off. But even if you angle it well, you make sure that this is up to 45 millimeters of effective thickness, then you still have this area here that's still 30. It's got all those little angles on it that make it so it's easier to pen wherever it is. It also has the crew of 3, so you just have to nick the turret and you'll be completely fine with killing it. Overall, I mean, if you don't have it, then obviously it's a nice little rare, but it's probably one of the weakest that we have here in terms of usability. The next vehicle is the A13 Mark II. Now, I don't have this vehicle, and I have no idea why I don't have this vehicle, but I don't. I have the A13 Mark I 3rd Royal Tank Regiment, but I'm guessing it's just the same as the A13 Mark II with a specific camouflage on it, because as you can see, it's called the A13 Mark II 1939. Now, if I'm wrong, and it's actually special, then I apologize. But what you're getting from the A13s is not a lot of armor, so you get crucified by the autocannons of rank 1, which are, the Metro rank 1, the Italians and the Germans, and also the quick-firing Americans, but the A13 has something that a lot of them don't, and that's good penetration. It's got a good, the 2-pounder gives you really good penetration, meaning that you can be up-tiered into at least 2.0, 2.3 and still be usable, and it's got some decent speed behind it as well. The only thing that really does let it down, as I said, is the armor. The reload rate on the gun is really good. The crew of 4 is okay spaced out, apart from the fact that there's 3 in the turret, but it's, you know, it's a decently sized turret, so being able to kill them all with one hit, you'd need some kind of explosive round. On top of it, you've got all the ammo stored here, and you've got the engine in the back. I personally enjoyed my times in the A13 when there wasn't autocannons on the other side which could just look at me and tap me, but if you're lucky enough to not run into them, the A13 is quite fun. If you run into them though, you're gonna just die. Oh, the T60 is another one which is incredibly good. Then the last vehicle is the CR.32 Bis. This is found in the Italian tree under aviation, and I believe this was available last time. Let's just see. Let's see. Yeah, this was available last time. So the CR.32 Bis is available right now on the Gaijin store, and it was one of the starter premiums for the Italians when they first came out. Now, it's a beautiful model, very much a nice HD model. It has access to a lot of guns for a biplane as well. 2 12.7mm Bredas plus 2 7.7 Bredas is really good against incoming biplanes. It's a little bit less maneuverable than biplanes, so the setup is a lot more important with it. So if you're looking for a vehicle to start off the game in, you know, if you're unexperienced, I would say this isn't for you. But if you're an experienced person who understands how to set up kills, then this would be an aircraft to go for. I think this is definitely very good as a biplane. You just have to make sure to not get into too many turning fights with too many aircraft and use your speed instead to be able to take out the enemy. Overall, I like it. I think it's a good aircraft. It's not as maneuverable as other biplanes. Just because it's a biplane doesn't mean it's maneuverable. Let's just put it like that. So the selection of these vehicles is great. You know, there's a lot of good stuff going on here. And if it was up to me to say which premium vehicle I want, I'd probably want the IR-81C or the... yeah, actually, just the IR-81C or maybe the HA-K3, because this one is incredibly expensive in the game, so this is the best value for money. Just remember, the way that the trophy vehicles work is you don't get to pick which vehicle you want. It is an RNG box that you can get, but if you want to buy these by themselves and not worry about the RNG elements, you can pick them up on the Gaijin store when they're available, when people go to sell them. I believe the CR.32 Bis is already there, so yeah, it's wonderful stuff. Anyway, that is having a look at the Warbond shop for April of 2019. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Nick Graham, Dyslexic Child, B. Young, and Blackie for supporting me on Patreon.